Imagine spending 19 years building a life, a marriage, a family, a future. And then, with one overheard sentence, realizing none of it was real. The kids? Not yours. The love? A lie. So what do you do? He vanished, but not forever. The wheels of Mark Ramsey's car crunched over the gravel as he pulled into his parents' driveway in the quiet outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the familiar lawn, casting everything in a golden glow. For a moment, he stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The day's property showings had been exhausting, but what weighed heavier was the invisible strain between him and Claire. Things with Claire had shifted in recent months. Their marriage, once grounded and easy, had turned quiet and distant. Words felt rehearsed. Smiles felt forced. They lived side by side, but it was like existing on parallel tracks that never crossed. Mark couldn't explain it fully, just a persistent gnawing sense that something was wrong. He had driven here on a whim. Maybe the house he grew up in, the comfort of his parents, could give him clarity. The scent of his mother's hydrangeas reached him as he stepped out of the car, flooding him with a nostalgic warmth that briefly softened the tension coiled in his shoulders. The creak of the porch steps beneath his feet felt like an old friend's greeting. As he raised his hand to knock, a voice caught his attention. The window to the living room had been left slightly ajar, and from it spilled the unmistakable sound of his mother's voice. He smiled instinctively, then froze. "When are you going to tell Mark that the boys aren't his?" The words hit with the force of a freight train. He stood rooted to the spot, hands still midair. His chest tightened. Then another voice followed, one he knew as well as his own. "Claire." "Not until after Noah and Liam graduate and get married," she said casually, as if commenting on the weather. "Eric can't provide the life they need." And Mark's never suspected. The air around him vanished. The porch blurred. Every sound dulled except for the roar in his ears. Mark stumbled backward, the wood of the railing catching him just in time. The names repeated in his mind, Noah, Liam, his twin sons, the ones he had raised, loved, protected. A lie. He didn't go inside. He didn't make a sound. Some primal instinct for self-preservation took over. Step by step, like a man possessed, he backed away from the house and returned to his car, sliding behind the wheel with a numb, mechanical precision. As he drove away, the reflection in his rearview mirror startled him, pale, wide-eyed, broken. He hardly recognized himself. The drive back to Raleigh passed in a haze. His mind looped the conversation over and over, each replay a deeper cut. 19 years of marriage unraveled in a 10-second eavesdrop. It wasn't just Claire's betrayal that hollowed him out, it was his mother's complicity. Two of the people he trusted most had crafted an illusion and let him live inside it. Their home, which once symbolized stability, now felt like a stage set built for a cruel play. He entered quietly, answering Claire's greeting with a calmness he didn't feel. She smiled at him, the same smile she'd worn for nearly 2 decades. How often had it been a mask? Mark played along. He ate the dinner she prepared. He responded when she mentioned the boys' football practice. But every word felt like poison swallowed without resistance. In the bathroom, under the hum of the overhead light, he let his expression collapse. He gripped the sink tightly, searching his reflection for answers. His face looked older. His eyes were shadowed, hollow. He wasn't sure of who he was anymore. He knew he couldn't confront Claire yet. Not until he had proof. Not until he had a plan. And so, over the following weeks, he watched. He observed. Every lie, every text she left unanswered, every unexplained errand, it all painted a picture he had once refused to see. Eric Dalton, the trusted family friend who had always been around, suddenly seemed too close, too familiar with Claire. Mark reached out to Daniel Cross, a private investigator he'd worked with during a real estate dispute years ago. Daniel didn't ask questions. He nodded when Mark said he needed discretion. Whatever judgment he held, he kept it buried beneath professionalism. While Daniel did his job, Mark began crafting his own contingency plans. He shifted accounts. He studied how to disappear without leaving a trail. He played the role of husband and father with haunting accuracy. No one noticed the cracks forming beneath the surface. Every time Noah laughed, every time Liam asked for advice, Mark's heart broke a little more. He searched their eyes for traces of truth, for signs that they knew, but they were innocent. Teenagers lost in the world of sports, friends, and college applications. Mark kept up the charade because he needed to. But beneath it all, a storm gathered. A storm that would soon demand release. And when Daniel finally called with the words, "We need to meet," Mark knew the course of his life was about to change forever. Mark Ramsey sat alone in his home office late into the night, the glow of his laptop screen casting a pale light across his face. The house was quiet. Claire and the boys were asleep upstairs, unaware that the man who shared their roof was no longer the same. His mind churned. The conversation he had overheard at his parents' house played on an endless loop, each word a serrated blade cutting deeper. Claire's betrayal, his mother's silence, and the cruel realization that the sons he adored were not biologically his, it had all hollowed him out. But in that emptiness, something new had taken root: resolve. He could not confront them, not yet. Emotions had no place in what he was about to do. What he needed was clarity, precision, and most of all, time. The first step was survival. Mark had spent nearly 2 decades building a respectable life in Raleigh, a thriving real estate career, a network of clients, and the image of a family man. Now he began dismantling that life piece by piece, quietly, methodically. He created new bank accounts under shell names. He funneled funds through legal channels, burying transactions under legitimate business activity. Retirement savings, emergency funds, side investments, he touched them all. He sold off smaller assets discreetly: an old motorcycle he never rode, a vintage watch he hadn't worn in years, a boat he kept at a friend's lake house. All of it became liquidity, ready to vanish with him when the time came. Meanwhile, Daniel Cross worked in silence. When they met a week later at a parking garage near downtown Charlotte, Daniel handed over a manila folder thick with evidence. Mark flipped through it in the front seat of his car. Photos of Claire and Eric Dalton together at hotels, restaurants, and parks, too many to ignore. There were financial records, shared accounts, transactions linking them going back years. Even a few credit card bills for out-of-town weekends labeled as conferences. Daniel's voice was steady as he summarized the findings. They've been involved for about 18 years. Maybe longer. You were never the only one. Mark didn't respond. He couldn't. The numbers, the timelines, the images, they told a story he was finally ready to believe. He closed the folder and stared straight ahead. The world outside the windshield seemed dull and muted. Back at home, he continued to act the part. He went to football games, asked the boys about school, kissed Claire goodnight. But now he observed everything with the detached focus of a man preparing for his final performance. He studied Claire like a chess opponent. Her tells. Her lies. Her patterns. She had always been clever, quick with excuses and faster with cover stories. But now Mark saw through her. Every work dinner was logged. Every text she typed when she thought he wasn't looking was noted. Eric, too, was easy to track. The accountant-turned-affair partner wasn't discreet. Mark began cross-referencing Claire's calendar with Eric's financial activity. There were patterns, weekends that aligned, overlapping vacations, even gifts purchased from the same stores. With Daniel's help, Mark took the next step, building his escape. He registered under a new identity, fake, but convincing. The name, James Lawson. Born in upstate Michigan. Clean background, fabricated work history, the works. They scouted locations. Montana stood out, remote, quiet, easy to vanish into. Daniel found a rundown cabin outside Bozeman that needed repairs, just enough of a project to make Mark's presence justifiable to any curious locals. He packed a bag and stored it in the attic: passport, burner phone, backup drives, legal papers, clothes. He backed up important files and secured duplicates in cloud accounts only he could access. Each night, as Claire slept beside him, he reviewed his checklists. But beneath the surface of control, the pain hadn't lessened. It only settled deeper. Sometimes he found himself watching the boys, Noah's intense focus during study sessions, Liam's laugh echoing down the hallway, and wondering what part of them came from him. The answer, of course, was none. And yet he had shaped them. His fingerprints were all over their lives. That was the cruelest truth. He loved them as fiercely now as he ever had, even if they were the product of another man's lies. On the night before his planned departure, Mark sat on the porch alone, staring into the dark. Inside, Claire was setting the table for dinner. The scent of rosemary chicken floated through the screen door. He thought about the years, birthdays, holidays, scraped knees, and bedtime stories. Then he thought about the voice he heard through that window. He stood up, went inside, and smiled like always. Tomorrow, he would become someone else. But tonight, he was still the man they believed he was. One last time. The road out of Raleigh was long and empty, the early morning light casting a silvery sheen over the asphalt as Mark Ramsey, now James Lawson, left behind everything he had known. The note he'd written for Claire sat folded neatly on the kitchen counter. It said little, only that he needed time and space. It was vague by design. By the time she found it, he would be gone without a trace. Montana greeted him with its vastness. Endless skies, towering mountains, and the silence of true isolation. The cabin Daniel Cross had secured was exactly as promised, worn down, weather-beaten, but tucked away enough to disappear into. Mark stepped inside with a duffel bag in one hand and a folder of new documents in the other. James Lawson's life began at that threshold. For weeks, he poured himself into the renovation. He replaced rotted floorboards, patched holes in the roof, and installed new locks. The work was physical, demanding, and exactly what he needed. Each task helped silence the noise in his mind, the betrayals, the lies, the faces of the sons he'd left behind. His transformation extended beyond the cabin. He grew a beard, let his hair grow longer, changed his posture, even adjusted the way he walked. He was no longer Mark, the real estate agent and family man. He was James, a solitary craftsman with a quiet past and no attachments. But the past didn't let go so easily. Daniel had outfitted the cabin with a secure digital network, encrypted servers, satellite uplink, surveillance access. Mark could watch his old life from afar, bank records, GPS traces, even security feeds. At first, he checked daily. Then every few days. Still, the habit held. Claire's panic arrived swiftly. Within 2 days of his disappearance, she had filed a missing person report. There were calls to neighbors, friends, even distant relatives. She cried to the police, pleaded on the phone. Her distress was real, but Mark couldn't tell how much was love and how much was fear. Eric Dalton entered the picture almost immediately. Within a week, Mark saw footage of him arriving at the house late at night. The embrace they shared said everything. Mark didn't flinch. Not anymore. He only noted it. Within a month, Claire had moved out. The family home, his home, was listed for sale. The boys, Noah and Liam, split time between dorms and temporary housing. Claire rented a modest apartment near downtown Raleigh. It was smaller, dimmer, and far removed from the life she had known. Daniel's updates came like clockwork. Audio recordings, financial statements, images. Mark watched as the facade of Claire's world began to crumble. Without his income, the mortgage became unmanageable. Without his presence, her credibility shrank. She and Eric fought often. Daniel's recordings captured fragments of their arguments, sharp with blame and bitterness. One evening, Mark sat in the cabin, staring at a paused surveillance frame of Claire slumped at her kitchen table, head in her hands. He felt nothing triumphant. Only hollow. He turned his attention to his sons. In photos from campus events, he saw Noah in a university debate tournament, standing tall and confident. Liam, in another image, grinned beside a football teammate, his arms slung over the other boy's shoulder. They looked healthy, focused, young. But there were signs. Their eyes looked tired, their posture tense. Daniel reported that both boys had pulled back from Claire emotionally. They rarely visited. Calls were brief. Something had shifted in them. Mark wondered if they sensed the truth. Or perhaps they just felt the weight of everything unspoken. Back in Montana, he launched a modest business repairing vintage vehicles. It had always been a side passion, one that now gave structure to his days. Locals brought him rusted pickup trucks, aging Chevys, and forgotten classics. He worked alone, and he liked it that way. The garage became his new sanctuary. Months passed. The seasons shifted. And slowly, a kind of routine formed: early mornings, long hours in the garage, quiet evenings with old blues records playing on vinyl. He read books. He cooked simple meals. He slept better than he had in years. But the past would still intrude. A song. A scent. The memory of Liam's laugh. The way Noah had once looked up to him after scoring his first touchdown. Ghosts that lingered. Mark, James, had disappeared. But the part of him that was a father had not. Then, 6 months in, Daniel sent an update unlike the others. He had managed to install a recording device in Claire's apartment. The latest file contained a conversation between her and Eric. The tension in their voices was unmistakable. "He just vanished," Claire said. "It doesn't make sense." "Maybe he found out," Eric replied. Silence followed. Claire responded, voice trembling, "That's impossible. We were careful. He never suspected." Mark sat in the dark cabin, listening to the exchange. They still believed they had control. They didn't know how much he had seen, how much he knew. They thought he was gone. But Mark Ramsey had simply become someone else. And he was still watching. Winter settled over Montana like a thick blanket, muffling sounds and slowing time. James Lawson, once Mark Ramsey, found comfort in the rhythm of snowfall and solitude. The garage where he restored vintage cars remained a beacon of activity, its warmth and engine hums keeping the silence at bay. He rarely checked the surveillance feeds anymore, but the past still found ways to reach him. One morning, a newspaper article popped up in the alert system Daniel Cross had set up. A college football game, state semifinals. 2 players stood out in the photo, Noah and Liam. They were older now, broader in the shoulders, more sure of themselves. Their jerseys were stained with sweat and dirt, but their faces beamed with joy. They had led their team to victory. James stared at the image for a long time. The pride was instant, involuntary. Then came the ache. He had missed it, every moment that led to that win. Their growth, their triumphs, their struggle. He had traded those years for the cold comfort of revenge. That night, he received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "If you're out there." It was from Claire. The message was short. She didn't ask where he was. She didn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, she apologized. She admitted she had lost everything: her home, her relationship with the boys, her sense of self. She said she understood now what her choices had cost. And though she knew she didn't deserve it, she hoped that somewhere, somehow, he had found peace. James didn't respond immediately. He read the email again and again. Each word chipped away at the walls he'd built. Eventually, without overthinking it, he replied with one line. "I'm alive. I'm okay. That's all you need to know." He closed his laptop and stepped outside. The snow had stopped, leaving the landscape untouched and still. For the first time in a long time, the anger didn't rise immediately. There was only silence. And within that silence, the first hint of release. Weeks passed. Work continued. James buried himself in engine blocks and restoration manuals. Locals praised his craftsmanship. A few even tried to befriend him. He allowed it cautiously. Emily Parks, his assistant, kept the business running smoothly. She asked no questions about his past. Then came a morning at the diner in town. James sat at the counter with a coffee when a pair of older men nearby began discussing football. "Those Winslow twins are going to go pro," one said. "Shame their dad disappeared. Missed the whole ride." James froze. His coffee cup hovered midway to his lips. He listened silently, the words soaking into him. That night, he couldn't sleep. The thought gnawed at him. For all the justifications, all the careful planning, what had he really accomplished? He had punished Claire, yes. But at what cost? The boys had grown up with questions, with absence, with a ghost where their father should have been. By dawn, the decision had been made. He called an emergency meeting with his staff. "I'm taking some time off," he said. "There are things I need to deal with." Emily looked concerned. "Everything okay?" James nodded, forcing a thin smile. "Just unfinished business." Within days, he was on a plane to North Carolina. The state he had fled, the past he had buried, called to him not with anger, but with responsibility. He stayed at a modest motel near downtown Raleigh. He trimmed his beard, cut his hair, bought clothes that didn't scream recluse. He didn't feel like Mark anymore. But he also wasn't just James. He was something in between. He spent the first day driving through neighborhoods that held memories, past the old house, now occupied by strangers. The final stop was Claire's apartment building. He didn't approach, only watched. The next day, his resolve solidified. He parked nearby and waited. Late afternoon, Claire exited to check the mail. She looked older, thinner, but there was a familiar grace to her movements. Then another car pulled up. Noah stepped out. James felt his heart stutter. The boy had become a man. Taller now, confident. They spoke briefly, then moved toward the building. Without planning it, James followed. Halfway up the sidewalk, the door opened again. Noah laughed at something Claire said, then spotted him. The laughter died. His expression twisted in confusion, then disbelief. "Dad?" James stopped, unable to find the words. Claire turned at the sound of Noah's voice. Her eyes landed on James. Her hand went to her mouth. "Mark!" A long silence fell. Then Noah's voice, harder now. "Where have you been?" James raised his hand slightly. "Please! Just let me explain." Claire put a hand on Noah's arm. "Let's go inside." James followed them in. The apartment was modest but clean. Photographs lined the walls, some of the boys, some older ones of happier days. What followed was hours of raw honesty. James told everything. The betrayal, the private investigator, the staged disappearance, the new identity. Claire cried silently. Noah listened with his jaw clenched. "I thought I was protecting you," James said. "I thought revenge would make it right. But I was wrong." Noah stood. "You left us. Do you know what that did to me? To Liam?" James could only nod. Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, too. For all of it." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Noah said, "Liam deserves to hear this. From you." James nodded. "If he's willing." That night, back at the motel, his phone buzzed. A text from Noah. "Talk to Liam. He wants to meet. Tomorrow. Noon. At the park." James stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I'll be there." The next morning, the winter air in Raleigh felt sharper than James remembered. He dressed plainly, dark jeans, a neutral coat, nothing that would draw attention. As he walked toward the park where he used to play catch with Noah and Liam, every step carried the weight of the years he had been gone. The park hadn't changed much. Same rusted swing sets, same cracked basketball court. Only the trees seemed taller, older. He spotted Liam sitting alone on a bench near the far end, hood up, hands jammed into the pockets of his sweatshirt. James approached slowly, unsure if his son would stay or walk away. Liam looked up. His expression was unreadable. He didn't move. James sat on the opposite end of the bench, leaving space between them. Thanks for meeting me, he said quietly. Liam didn't reply. His eyes stayed fixed on the frozen pond ahead. I know you probably have 100 things you want to say. Maybe yell. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to be honest. The next 20 minutes passed with James speaking and Liam listening. He shared everything, again, but this time not as a confession, more as an offering. There was no attempt to justify, only to explain. When he finished, the silence stretched between them. You know, Liam finally said, voice low. When you left, I thought it was my fault. I thought I'd done something to make you leave. James turned to face him, stunned. No, Liam. Never. None of this was because of you or Noah. I know that now, Liam said, still not looking at him. But for a long time, I hated you. And then I missed you. And then I just stopped feeling anything at all. The honesty in his words hit harder than any anger could have. James felt his throat tighten. I deserve that, he said. And more. They sat in silence, the kind that holds both grief and possibility. Eventually, Liam stood up. He didn't walk away. He extended a hand. James took it. They didn't speak more. They didn't need to. Something had shifted. Over the next few weeks, James remained in Raleigh. He didn't try to reclaim his old life, it was gone. But he met with Noah and Liam a few times. Sometimes separately, sometimes together. They talked, or just walked in silence. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a start. Claire reached out once. She asked to meet, not as an ex-wife, but as a mother. They sat in a coffee shop, both visibly changed. She looked tired but resolute. I still think about the day you vanished, she said. It destroyed everything. I know, James replied. I'm not asking to go back, she continued. But I want the boys to heal. And I think you being here helps. He nodded. That's all I want too. They didn't speak of the affair. Or the years lost. Some things were better left buried. What mattered now was the present, their sons and the quiet, fragile hope that things could be different moving forward. By spring, James returned to Montana. Not because he was running again, but because he needed space to figure out who he really was now. The garage waited for him. Emily had kept things running smoothly. The familiar scent of oil and steel welcomed him like an old friend. He kept in touch with the boys. Not daily, not constantly, but enough. Enough to build something new. Photos came in. Updates on school, games, internships. Sometimes just a simple, hey. And each message, however brief, reminded him that redemption wasn't out of reach. One day, while repairing the engine of an old Ford, he paused. The sun slanted through the garage window, catching dust and golden streaks. He realized he was smiling, not the practiced smile of Mark Ramsey, but something quiet and genuine. He hadn't reclaimed the life he lost. He'd built something else. Something slower. More intentional. And maybe that was enough. The man who had once vanished had reappeared, not as the same person, but as someone stronger for the breaking. The past would never fully leave him, but neither would the love he still carried for the sons he raised. That, at least, remained unshaken. And now, finally, he wasn't running from it anymore.